So welcome. This is going to be the Tradewin Judge Training. And so during this training, what we're going to look at is a combination of ethics training, financial disclosure and training, and also source selection training. So during the evaluation process, we want to make sure that we're using our sound judgment. Really, you folks have been chosen to be part of this and have really been chosen as a judge because you have SME experience in what we're asking to have evaluated. So we want to make sure that you guys are fairly and impartially evaluating each of the vendors up against what we have established for the evaluation criteria. We want to make sure that you document what you find. Being able to document is allowing us to understand how you came to your conclusions and your decisions, and also it will help provide feedback to vendors who you may have said thank you, but no thank you to. So understanding the challenges that we have put out is very important. We want to understand what we're asking industry to come back to us with. And so being able to have your critical thinking hat on, because you want to put in that critical thinking into your judgment to be able to say, okay, we're evaluating based on this information that is being provided to us. It is being provided to us because we asked for said information to come to us so that we can understand better what the solution is that you are offering to the government. Make sure that you are evaluating the information that is given to you. Try not to use any of your own personal knowledge. If you happen to know that company or maybe have worked with that company previously, we want to just focus on what they're offering us for this particular effort. Security is still a must. It does look a little different in the hybrid situation that a lot of us are in. So regardless if you are in your office space, your government office space, or if you are in a work from home situation, you want to make sure that you secure all of your evaluation material and that you do not talk about it with folks that do not have a need to know, that are not part of the judges, and you don't want to discuss it if you're in the office, say in the kitchen or in the hallway. So you just want to make sure that you are keeping the information that you are evaluating to yourself, just to the evaluation team, and really not discussing it with anyone outside of that. Okay, so let's go into these OGE 450s. Now, some of us have to do them anyway because it's a requirement for us within the government. Some folks do not. So, but the reason why we have you send in an OGE 450 is because we have to make sure that you do not have any financial conflicts of interest. And what could potentially one of those conflicts of interest look like? It could be if you own stock in a company, a vendor who comes to submit for this particular requirement, if you have stock that is over $15,000. Financial conflict of interest could also look like if you have sector funds that are valued at $50,000 or more. So another way that you could have a financial conflict of interest is if you are at maybe the end of your government service and you're starting to look for employment elsewhere, maybe in the private sector. And if you are seeking employment with an offer or a set of offers that have proposed to this particular requirement, that would constitute a financial conflict of interest. This also could happen if your spouse or minor dependent child also has a financial interest very similar to yours in the sense of owning stock that is more than $15,000 or owning sector funds that are above $50,000 or more. And then also the same ruling of seeking employment with one of the offers can also apply to your spouse or minor dependent child. If any of these conflicts arise, you could have a couple of ways of trying to continue on being a judge. You could divest yourself of the stock or sector funds, same for your spouse or dependent minor child. You could request a waiver. I will be very forthright with you. The waivers do take quite a bit of time. So really, in all reality, what has happened is we've asked the judges to disqualify themselves from the team. So we've talked about what can be a seen conflict of interest with your financial interest. So what happens if there's something where it could be a perceived financial conflict of interest? What does that look like? So what we're thinking here is that you have to think about what you have going on in your world that may not show up on the OGE 450. The OGE 450 is going to talk about you, your spouse, your minor dependent child. It's going to talk about your assets. But what would happen about some of I have a couple of scenarios up here for you, but what if you have an adult child no longer living in your home, is no longer a dependent child, but they are a VP for one of the government operations branch of one of the offers? A reasonable person, as defined by the courts of law, may look at that and say, I question your impartiality in being able to fairly and impartially evaluate this particular offer. This could happen also if you have a close friend that might be one of the lead negotiators of one of the offers. Also, you may have, in these times now, we have quite a few families that have extended family members living under their household. So this could be someone other than your spouse or minor dependent child that is a major stockholder in one of the offers. So these are just examples of what could be perceived by a reasonable person as a conflict of interest. So a reasonable person may also want to understand, well, why are you evaluating this particular offer when you do have a potential conflict of interest? We need to know about these things because, like I said, they're not going to show up on your OGE 450s. This is really where we need you to step forward and tell us that you may have a potential conflict of interest. Again, with conflicts of interest, it runs very similarly to what we have as options for you to continue on with being a judge. Basically, obviously, disqualification from being a judge is usually what we go with, but there are ways that we can look into the potential conflict of interest and determine what risk level it would be to the government to have you continue on as a judge in this particular effort. So one of the things that we have in FAR-based actions, non-FAR-based actions, is the Procurement Integrity Act. And basically what that is the Procurement Integrity Act means that you as a government official, whatever your role may be, that there are certain things that you can and cannot do because you are spending the taxpayers' dollars and you are making decisions that would lead or could lead to an award that would spend said taxpayers' dollars. So when you think about employment contacts that you may have, like I said, maybe you're getting to the end of your government career and you're looking for something outside for post-government work. Basically, you have to determine if you are going to be participating in an action that you are going to have a personal and substantial relationship with an offer that could be your future employer. And so one of the rules that we always tell folks is that your ethics counselor will become your very best friend because you want to go to that person and make sure that you report the contact from said company and let them know, hey, I declined the offer of employment, or I am considering doing that. And your ethics counselor will work with you on the possibilities of making sure that you do not break the Procurement Integrity Act while still being able to work with you on how you can find post-government employment. So the Procurement Integrity Act also makes sure that we protect information. So not only are we spending the taxpayers' dollars and making determinations on potential awards that would spend those taxpayers' dollars, but we also have to be careful of the information that we're given by our vendors. The vendors are going to want to share with us proprietary information. So, for example, source selection information. The contractors, the vendors are going to come in with their proposal information. They're going to give you information that is proprietary to them. Now, sometimes in some of our efforts, we do work with trade secrets. So, of course, the Trade Secrets Act would apply. And then, of course, everyone underneath the government has to go through annual ethics counseling and training. Those standards would still apply. Okay, there we go. So another part of the protection of this information is, again, kind of goes back to what we discussed with security. You really need to practice who really needs to know this information. And we don't want to discuss it with those who don't have a need to know. Okay, so all this kind of comes together in what do we do with post-government employment issues? So as I talked before with the Procurement Integrity Act, we as government officials, regardless of your role, have certain representation restrictions. And so, for example, if you have something that is personal and substantial, that is an absolute forever restriction for you to represent. One of the things that under, like, for example, my role as an agreements officer, if I do something within my official responsibility, I have a 2-year restriction based upon my last year of service. So the Special Procurement Integrity Act rule pertains to certain agency officials. So it really depends upon your role. But basically, if you are working with a contract or agreement that is $10 million or more, for 1 year, you can take no compensation from that contractor. So that means you could not become a 1099 with them. You could not seek employment with them. You do have to be careful nowadays with as many vendors as we have available to us in industry. A lot of vendors have different divisions or sub-affiliates or affiliates that produce things that are similar to what some of the other divisions are doing. So if you work with a company that has 3 divisions and you've worked with Division A, if you are seeking employment or compensation from Division B, you have to be very, very careful to make sure that Division A and Division B are not making things within the same or similar scope of what that Division A was working on. So again, your ethics counselor is going to be your best friend. I can give you the basics of what we look for in OGE 450s, perceived financial conflicts of interest, post-government employment, but really anytime you are entertaining post-government employment, and it is with a company that you may have had some involvement with through your official job duties, then you want to go and see your ethics counselor. What your ethics counselor will do for you is they will write up an actual opinion that you can have to basically keep yourself from breaking any of the Procurement Integrity Act rules and also any of the restrictions that you may have based on your evaluations that you may have done, especially during this particular effort. So if you have any questions during this, the contracting team is myself, I'm the agreements officer, Jason Calkins, he's the agreement specialist, and then also Rick Murphy is our legal advisor.